Dave, take it away.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first session for this year's UW system meeting. Happy to have you all. One thing I would ask for those who are capable is if you have a video capability, feel free to turn it on, because Wes and I aren't going to be sharing any slides or presentations today. You're just going to get the 411 from us as we go. And I can tell you last year when we recorded this, it looked great to have all of the faces on there because, you know, it blew up YouTube. I think we had 9 views over the year. So, I mean, it was really like the hot item on YouTube to like be checking us out. So, and then it just makes it more enjoyable when we can see people laughing at our humor. So that's always nice. Also, I had the ability to realize like Wes and I are your comedic sandwich for the day, because you're gonna start with us here in the 101 session, and then if you show up to happy hour, you're gonna get a blast from us at the end. So, you know, we're really gonna hope nobody bails on us in the first 15 minutes. So for this presentation, we're just gonna be going over the history of the UW system sustainability, sort of who we are and what we do. The session is really geared towards students and others who might not be as familiar. So for those of you who have been around the block or, you know, participated in our video recording last year, some of this will be a little familiar to you, but I can guarantee Wes and I have added a few new tricks along the way just to keep you engaged and entertained. So with that being said, I'm gonna pass it off to Wes to get us started.
Great, thanks, Dave. Yeah, so I'm Wesley Enterline. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at UW-Whitewater, formerly Sustainability Director, and then formerly Sustainability Coordinator. So they're doing a little job switcheroo with the title Total Comp. So here I am back to my roots. That's a good kind of framework for talking about sustainability at the system level. There's been a lot of ups and downs over the history, lots of twists and turns. Now, a sustainability position at a higher education institution is a relatively new thing. It really has occurred within the last 20 years or so. And within the UW system, this chronology really kind of starts in roughly 2008. I know with my own story, I was a student from 2006 to 2008 at UW-Whitewater doing a second undergraduate degree. You know, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, basically, and happened to stumble into the American College and University President's Climate Commitment and some of the initiatives going on during the mid-2000s that really, unbeknownst to me, was leading to a whole new kind of career path for a lot of different professionals interested in this topic area. So within the system, I think Kate still holds the crown as being the not oldest, I won't say, but most senior member of our team at UW-Milwaukee. I think her position was first. Right around that same time, in 2008, UW-Stout, UW-Whitewater, and UW-Superior all were able to gain their positions. A lot of these positions started off as part-time, temporary project appointments. I know Dusty's on the call from Superior. Dusty is now basically forced to wear like 28 different hats, I think, at this point. They lost their position basically at the end of the project appointment. It didn't last very long at Superior. Some of the rest of us have had some success carrying through into full-time positions. And then at that same time, we also had a UW system administration position. Last year, we had Eileen Norby join us out of retirement, calling in from Alaska, which we didn't really think about in advance, but we basically made her get up at like 5 in the morning to attend the meeting. But she was gracious enough to join and share a little bit of her history. But, you know, ultimately we have somebody kind of coordinating things at that central level, helping us plan meetings, doing some of the communication things and other, you know, tasks kind of associated with that. So, you know, so I think her position again was one of those that was ultimately lost to budget cuts. She was partially funded by the Solid Waste Research Grant, which was defunded with Act 10. So, you know, over the time, we've seen a lot of kind of variability. Some staffs have grown and then shrunk again, you know, where we've had other associate positions added and then we lost them. And then, you know, there's several campuses, just to acknowledge the kind of current reality, several campuses that are going through transitions this year. New staff being added in at Green Bay and Eau Claire, and staff leaving at Stout and Platteville.
Dude, so you're stealing my thunder, man. Come on.
Sorry, is that coming up? Sorry, my bad. So there's always a little bit of variability, but Dave will tell you all about that in a different slide that I forgot about. Kind of moving forward a little bit, UW-Madison, to be quite honest, was a little later to the game as far as campus sustainability goes. They formed their office in around 2014. This was a big step for us in the UW system because Madison is huge. They, are a very large institution compared to the rest of us. And it was really important to get that kind of initiative at the sustainability at that level. And then, that positive impact has kind of reverberated through a lot of the work we've done since. Moving forward just a few more years, right around the time Missy started up as the director of sustainability at Madison, we had our system meeting in Stevens Point, and Dave broke us out into tables, and we just kind of talked about different issues. And from that, one of the working groups was kind of formed. The initial communications and annual meeting planning working group was kind of formed at that meeting. And that working group concept really has been rolling forward to guide the majority of our work moving up through this point. So we'll share a little bit on the working groups in the next session. But Madison had a really instrumental role in helping us organize. If it comes down to like Alex Frank running our monthly meetings and being the one essentially coordinating all that for us for the first year. Some of the working groups were essentially chaired by different staff members at Madison. So we're really thankful to have this kind of structure in place. And I think now we're, even more organized than we ever have been to really take our collaborative efforts to the next level. So it's pretty exciting to be back in, into another UW system meeting and figure out where our next steps lie. Dave, who are we?
Oh, that is a good question about who we are. We're a ragtag bunch of do-gooders, I think is the last time I knew who we were. So talking a little bit about who we are for folks and to get a better understanding of that. So first of all, across the system, we all come from different and unique places as it relates to the hierarchy and structure of where we're housed within UW system and at our individual institutions. So I think for folks who are unaware of that, it's important to know that if you're familiar with the sustainability office or group on your campus, it's probably not housed in the same location as the sustainability office on another campus. And we also have departments that have combined roles. So we've got people who are doing sustainability and risk management. We've got people who are doing sustainability and custodial work. We've got some sustainability and integration into curriculum and academics, as Chancellor Levitt noted in his opening. And so just being aware that we're sort of, some of us are our own individualized space, but that we're all coming at this from sort of different locations depending on where we are. I think another thing to note is that some of our institutions even have specialized sort of departments around these sort of collaborations and efforts. So like at UWGB, there's the Environmental Management and Business Institute. At UW-Oshkosh, there's the Sustainability Institute for Regional Transformation. And at UW-Madison, there's the Nelson Institute. So I think it's just sort of good to be aware that across the system, there are these other sort of components that are working into sustainability. And then for our work as a system, we sort of break individuals down into different categories just for sort of communication purposes. So we have primary contacts, secondary contacts, faculty and fellows, and students. So those are the different ways that we group into group people so we can better sort of streamline our communication. And I think one of the things talking about who we are is it's important to know who we are sort of collectively. So we're going to start a little process. I'm going to put in the chat. And so believe it or not, Wes and I are going to ask you to engage in other things while you listen to us roll along. So I'm going to put in the chat 5 or 6 questions that I would love for you to throw in the chat, what school you're from, what your role is, and then answer those questions. And you can either answer them in order or not in order. And then feel free to reach out to people who have interesting answers or similar answers and just sort of chat to them directly. Wes is really interested to know which vegetable you would be. So I would definitely get on that one. That'll pique his interest. And so while you're doing that, I'll talk about some of the changes that UW System Sustainability has been through in the last couple of years, or in the last couple of months rather. So first of all, we have said goodbye to a number of staff. So we lost a specialist down in Whitewater named Ashley Floor. She left us after last year. We've lost two long-term facilitation directors that have been with us for a long time, Sarah Reichel and Stout and Amy Seabold Wilson at UW-Platteville. We also lost some key surplus people at UW-Milwaukee. We lost Andrew Avery Johnson, and at Platteville, we lost Josh Chamberlain. So if you get a chance to talk to Mary Penn, who I think is on the call, give her some love. Hi, Mary. She's basically lost her whole supporting team down there, so she's handling the ship flying solo. But at the same point, we've also been able to bring in new people because of that. So when Sarah left at Stout, we had two graduate students who have stepped up to the plate. I think I saw both of their names on here at some point, Katie Wright and Abrina Leonard. So they're trying to keep the ship afloat over there in Stout and moving forward. Then we've also picked up other professional staff. Brian Drollinger at UW-Eau Claire has come on board, as well as Daniela Beal at UW-GB. So we're strengthening our team and we're losing team. And so I think it speaks to that point of this all being a process. And I love to see that people are actually getting on board in the chat. So that's great. Please talk it up with each other as we move along. Other additions that have been pretty exciting for us as a sort of group of primary contacts has been the addition of Deej Lundgren and Pete Davis to our group. So those two gentlemen are coming to us from UW System, and they are helping to move some of our working group ideas forward. So you'll hear more about that in the working group update section. And find out more about that. But I think it's just important to know that we do have a lot of change going through the system currently. So our primary contacts are just the lead sustainability officials at each institution. So we basically dial that down to one person, maybe in Madison's two, just because they're so big in terms of their contacts. But basically that's either the chief sustainability officer, sustainability coordinator, sustainability director. So those folks are sort of considered the primary contacts. And then secondary contacts would be some of the other folks that are integrated into sustainability, but might not have that as their lead job. So lots of times folks in surplus, people working on campus garden programs, people handling waste management, oversight, recycling efforts, all that sort of thing. So those are sort of our secondary contacts, people who are looped in. Some of those folks are on this call right now. And so they are the sort of supporting mycelium, as it were, that help to keep us all going and connected. I got a giggle out of West with the mycelium, so that's well done for me.
Get that soil science in there, Dave.
What's that?
Got to get that soil science going.
That's right. So those are our secondary contacts. Along in that group are our faculty. Almost all of our campuses have faculty teaching sustainability either directly or indirectly. And so we tie them into those secondary contacts. And then most importantly are the students. And I say that with true intentionality. I work in an office of one, just like Wes does. And so the only way I get stuff done in my office is because of the students who are here working with us, and they really drive us. They push us to be better, they push us to change, and they set the agenda for where we're going. So if it wasn't for the students, none of us would be on this call having this conversation anyway. So intentionally save the best for last in that regard. So that's a little bit about who we are and sort of the different roles that come into being over the course of the year as we work together. And I think that's on to what we do then.
What do we do? Good question. Well, the main thing that we're doing is what we're doing right now. We're networking, we're connecting with each other from across the state. You know, this is really, in my opinion, kind of the reason why we work so hard to do these collaboration efforts, to be able to connect with other professionals doing this kind of work. There's a lot of personal and professional reasons why networking is important. And, if there's more students on the call, I might go on my little networking rants. I think I was talking to a student last night after a student org meeting, and she got the soapbox speech about networking on campus. So I'll try to control myself right now. So there's obviously, it's not, the old saying goes, it's not what you know, but who you know. But for, me personally, at least over the last 13 years of doing this job, I kind of joke sometimes it feels like I'm trapped on Sustainability Island. And the island kind of looks like a giant half-acre plot in the middle of campus with a garden located on it. So that's usually what people associate with our program, is our campus garden. And it's hard for me as a single person on campus working on this issue with some interns to really feel like I'm able to branch out to all areas and make a difference. And that can be discouraging. Some of this work can be very challenging. You're asking the campus to tackle big, tough issues that usually have a time frame well beyond the next fiscal year. So trying to get leaders and administrators engaged in this effort is a challenge. And sometimes it's helpful just to commiserate with your peers, get together once in a while and, just rage it out, I guess. Talk about where you're having your struggles, where you're having your highlights, get a little bit of support from your friends. And, then obviously the professional aspect of this is that for those of us doing this for a while, we can be a resource to people that are new to the position, or maybe had this position foisted upon them in other duties as assigned part of your position description. There's definitely a few of those that are floating out there now and have in the past. So we want to try to be a resource for each other, both professionally and personally. And and from there, it's all, you get out of it what you put into it. And I put a lot of effort into our collaboration efforts, and I really feel like it's been rewarding for me in a lot of different ways. So to facilitate this, we have a few different tools that I'll kind of also touch on in the working group, because this is part of the working group that I'm chairing right now. But we use Google Shared Drive. Madison hosts that for us as a repository for documents. So if you're not on the shared drive, just shoot me a message, email. You can just send a message to sustainability@uww.edu. I don't, everyone knows how to spell sustainability here probably. So usually that's the problem with that email account. So this is a good way to kind of keep connected with what we're doing, get looped into some of the different things that we're doing in the working groups, but then also share documents and other resources that might be helpful for you. Something like electric vehicle charging policies has been coming up as a topic of conversation in a few different campuses, and sharing some of the work that we're doing that way cuts down on the overall development that we have to do on that individually. We do a monthly teleconference, so that's a call open to anyone who cares to attend. And I know a lot of you have already been on that call. Perhaps that's how you learned about this meeting, for example. But that monthly call is all hosted on Zoom now. Back in the good old days, we used this device called a telephone. It sits on my desk and stares at me now, but once upon a time, I used to interact with it regularly. And now we just switched over to Zoom so we can share documents and look at each other's pretty faces, I guess. So that's a great way to keep connected kind of the week to week or month to month. And then if you have agenda items, you're welcome to bring those to that meeting. It's always an open agenda with some updates from the working groups. We do some digital platforms as well. We have a website on the wisconsin.edu site with some basic information about the campuses and the profiles. And then obviously that's where you registered for this conference. We do have a listserv. Back several years ago, the listserv was deleted at the UW system level without us knowing about it. So suddenly our listserv just stopped working. Thankfully, Amy from Platteville is smart enough to download the contact list from a pretty recent version of the listserv. So we were able to upload it into UW-Whitewater's awful listserv software. So that's what we have now. It's all administered through UW-Whitewater, and it is not great. Dave is not a fan at all. And he reminds me of that regularly. But it still generally functions at least as a one-way communication tool for me to blast stuff out to everyone else. So if you're having problems, just let me know and I can send it through the portal basically. Or you can log into the portal and and I wish you Godspeed in figuring out the software because it's pretty weird. And then just essentially a lot of collaboration is a little bit more ad hoc and emails, direct emails, phone calls, and meetings with others, kind of individually or in small groups. So we'll learn about some of that work as we go through some of the other sessions today. But the point is we have a contact list that everyone should feel welcome to use and reach out to different people. And you can get to the primary contacts on the profiles on the system website. Oops, skipped ahead a little bit. So
that's my slide. Get off of there.
Yeah, sorry, buddy. Being that we're largely under-resourced as far as staff, Dave and I are back to the solo act again after having administrative staff to help us out. It probably would have been better never to have administrative staff, then we would never know what it's like just to not operate on our own. But here we are back to square one, basically, and having help from other people who have a few more resources to share best practices is really kind of the point, right? Like that's the professional advantage of connecting with your peers, working on the same stuff. But within the system specifically, we have a lot of shared realities. We have different policies that affect us in procurement and things like that. So it's definitely helpful to be able to kind of speak that same language with everyone else. If we're going to fight the system, we might as well fight the same system that we're all working within. I'm using that in quotes, Pete. I'm not really trying to fight you. Hopefully we can get a lot of this accomplished in some of our annual meeting conversations. So in that vein, I definitely encourage you to feel free to speak up. We intentionally call this a meeting because we don't want it to be a one-way conversation, us talking at you. We really hope that even if you feel like you're relatively new to the situation, you're not hesitating to ask questions and add your comments and perspectives, because we've been hearing from each other for so long. It'd be nice just to get some fresh perspectives in here anyway. And then, I think ultimately, we're looking at trying to, mobilize around some of these collective efforts that really can only be done at the system level. So, some of the work that Kate has done to lead us in the virtual power purchase agreement. There's UW system efforts to address climate change that are coming up from the student activist level, and being able to keep in touch with some of that student engagement aspect, as well as those kind of big projects that affect all of us or could affect all of us in really significant ways, is a pretty good reason to stay connected regularly. Then finally, when it comes down to representation, we've gone out to ASHE conferences together in the past, and basically we try to get together to do something as simple as take a group picture. Dave has pointed out that ASHE will use our group picture in their marketing materials, and it really, reflects well in Wisconsin. It's a super simple thing to do in theory, like you just stand there and get a picture taken. But when you're trying to herd 30 or 40 people at a giant conference in this building that is like cavernous and it's got lots of rooms and intermittent connection, it's kind of like herding cats. So it's actually a huge accomplishment as far as our coordination goes. So I look at that as being an achievement, even if it has a simple result. So that's just kind of a few things that we do. We'll kind of go into a little bit of the history of the annual meeting and working groups here, and then we'll transition over. Oh, we got a question. Ashley? No, just kidding. Hi, Ashley.
And one of the things I want to talk about, just to really reiterate that point Wes made about the sort of unity that we represent at ASHE, it can't be understated or undervalued. We are really the only state at that national conference that gets together to really bring all of our institutions together, even for a moment in time, for that sort of photography and picture aspect. And I really do think it speaks to the strength of our work. And if you go back and look at the pictures of that process from 2015 when we started to our last conference in person in 2019, the pictures grew from about 10 people to about 50. And so it really just speaks to our collaborative nature, bringing it together. And it does look great when you open up some sort of national programming from ASHE, and there we are rocking out because we look great and nobody else does what we do. So you should take a lot of pride in that in terms of what system you're coming from and representing in that regard. There, soapbox, moving on. So on to the annual meeting. So Wes sort of talked about, we get together once a year as a real sort of point of focus. We also end up having some indirect gatherings over the course of the year, depending on how that plays out, just in terms of how people travel and move. One of the things that's also nice is it gives us an opportunity to get together when it's convenient. So I know, for example, when not too long ago this fall, Missy was on her way to Marshfield, I think, for a meeting. And so was able to just stop and point, and we got together and had coffee and were able to connect and talk about things. So these meetings, this work together over the year helps to facilitate that process and keep us connected in that regard. Wes talked about how we perceive this as a meeting and not a conference. So that's just important to remember that it's really here for a conversation. We aren't here to sort of stand up on high and say, here, this is what you need to do. This is the best way to do it. We're really trying to plan to move forward. As you all know, we're supposed to be at Oshkosh this year. That was sort of a late decision. I think the Delta variant really threw some kinks in that for us at the end, and probably a good thing that we are where we are. But I know both Mark at River Falls last year and Brad this year were pretty bummed that we couldn't do it in person, particularly because they couldn't show off their local food at our evening dinner. And so that leads me to sort of just talking about how this meeting flows or comes together. So there is no permanent structure to which campus hosts which year. So since 2013, Madison and Point have hosted twice. Whitewater, Platteville, Milwaukee, and River Falls have all hosted, and now Oshkosh. So if you are from an institution whose name I just didn't call, La Crosse, Eau Claire, Green Bay, Stout, Superior, Parkside, we'd love to have you volunteer to say, hey, we want to do this next. And we'd be happy to travel to your campus next year, because I'm gonna make the declaration now. We're gonna be in person next year. I can just feel it. We're going to be post-COVID and getting together.
If you have the power to cancel a COVID day, why don't you just do it now?
Well, I don't want to have to go spend too much time with my in-laws at the holidays. So let's get through there, and then we can get into it again. At this point, what's another 6 weeks? It's fine. One of the things that I do want to talk about just quickly to sort of tease all of the folks who are new or haven't been involved is that on our first night over the last few years, since West hosted us in Whitewater in 2015, we have gotten into a very cordially competitive contest about who can provide the best local dinners for us. And so over the years, we've really had some great effort and competition to really highlight local food in our communities and the collaboration and partnerships that our sustainability offices have with our local food economies. And so quite honestly, that's probably one of the biggest things that I miss about not being able to be in person, is to get together and have that dinner and really just sort of be able to collaborate over good local food and hear the stories about where that's coming from. So if you haven't been to one of those dinners, hopefully next year that will be enough to entice you to come join us again, because it really is just an unbelievable experience. And then, this last point that I want to make about our meeting is it's really an opportunity for us to continue working in our working groups, but be more broad in that effort, and to bring people who might not be working in this on the daily effort into the conversation, to gather new ideas from them, to get their input, and to really try and think about how we continue to advance our efforts. And so, that's another great part of this meeting and sort of why we're here in terms of some of the effort we're trying to make. Lastly, before I kick it back to Wes to finish off, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the planning committee from this year. So Brad at Oshkosh and Mark from River Falls, who hosted last year, along with Jake McCullough in Madison, who If Jake doesn't brag about his fair trade certification efforts, talk to him about it or tell him why he's not bragging about it, because it's a pretty awesome accomplishment. As well as this guy from Whitewater. I don't think we need to bring him up, but I guess he helped plan too, some sort of influence of that anyways. So that's just sort of the general structure of the meeting and what we do and why we're here. Unless you got a minute to finish, buddy, so you got to bring it home fast.
Well, see, we planned this so well, being that, you know, I'm on the planning committee, that the last slide that we talk about is working groups, which just happens to be the next section we're talking about. So we could probably just end this recording, restart the next one,